Hey, Mike.
Hey, Tim.
So in researching these ideas, obviously I put into ChatGPT what are the three essential methods and mechanisms of dealing with stress. And the answers were physical exercise, making sure you're doing physical exercise and doing enough physical exercise. That quantity will be dependent on everybody. Mindfulness, yeah, which I find is a very challenging one for many people. And thirdly, time management. I just want to spend a little bit on time management because I also believe that getting into this and creating a longer term approach to time management is something that benefits everybody. What does time management mean when it comes to stress mitigation? For me, it means having priorities that are more important than the stuff that is stressing you out, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So, my wife is a primary school teacher. She's a few years younger than I am, and she's very good at her job. And she's always been stressed. I mean, always been stressed. And last summer, she finally, I've been teaching her this stuff all of the time. She's been ignoring it forever. But she finally got around to looking at time management from a slightly different perspective and really formulating 5 or 6 principles and goals that were massively important for her on a long-term perspective. So like one example, everything is about the children. If it brings value for the children, then it's going to get a tick, and I'll maybe do that. And then she look at a list of all of the various things to do and say, if there's one thing that I'm going to do tomorrow or the next day, what would it be? So if I had to prioritize only one of those things, what would it be? And that went into the agenda and that went onto the list. So we're 2 months in and it's going quite well. And
Mhm.
for sure, the system's going to change, but there is a remarkable difference. Yeah? And this is for somebody who is already 50 years old, who's been struggling with the topic of stress and time management since they were 20, younger, 18. And it kind of makes me think that anybody who's younger has a massive opportunity to use thinking around time management in order to make their own stress cake or pie, if you like, a little bit better.
This makes perfect sense to me, Tim. We, of course, teach a certain time management model, and the key question we put in front of people is what is your priority or what is important in terms of where you use your time or what you achieve from it. And what we find is that so many people don't have an answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
Their time management is essentially constructed of what am I being asked to do, what is put in front of me, just list of tasks in some sort of chronological order without really a thought of how important is this for my work? How important is this for my family? How important is this for me personally? And particularly that last one gets missed off the list probably almost entirely. I can say one of the main reasons that people don't do mindfulness is because they don't see that they have the time for it and they don't see that it should be a priority, which is just, well, wrong and ironic because of course mindfulness actually contributes massively to productivity, even taking a small amount of time out of your day to focus on yourself and listen to yourself allows you to clear your thoughts, and actually you're more likely to be more productive after doing it.
So we were working once, a colleague and I were working with a lady who was the executive secretary for a bank, and she had 5 bosses. She had 2 or 3 people who were reporting to her, but she didn't look stressed. She looked like $1 million. I mean, she was, she had gold and mink and, beautiful clothes and dripping off her. But when she spoke to us, she showed us a to-do list. And I'm not joking. We calculated the quantity of time it would take to achieve everything on that to-do list. And she had something in the region of 270 hours worth of work to be achieved within the next 10 days. But she was incredibly cool, calm, and collected. My colleague was asking her, she says, this doesn't seem to be a problem. You seem to be handling this very well. And she says, well, I've got a lot of practice in hiding my emotions and showing a good front for the world. And she says, but what are the impacts of this? And she says, well, my husband's left me. My children's left me. My dog is just about to leave me. So she painted a picture of a terrible family constellation and situation. She was burned out. When people burn out, that's bad for them, but it's worse for the families because they have to deal with it first. Yeah. So, and this is, proven. When somebody burns out, their families have already gone through loads and loads of pain because you can't deal with your stuff. And that's all about prioritization and setting personal long-term goals. So the reflection question for me is like, what's important to you? Yeah, it's got nothing to do with work. It's like, what do I want to achieve? I want to build a house. Where's that guitar? I want to learn how to play that guitar that's behind there. I can't play a guitar. Mike can play a guitar. And I want to run up Mount Kilimanjaro. I want to do good works for the local orphanage. Yeah, there are goals which are front and center of everything, which are way, way, way more important than the 9 till 5. And establishing them and describing them and writing them and breaking them down into bullet points and allocating time and resources to them and thinking about them decreases stress in the normal day-to-day work.
I see this as kind of like having purpose, not just a purpose as defined by your job role, but having purpose in your life. And this is something that I really, really agree with. I mean, I've read Man's Search for Meaning. Tim, have you read that? Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a prominent psychiatrist actually in Vienna. He was coming off the back of Freud and Jung. And he was Jewish, and so he ended up in a concentration camp in Auschwitz during the Second World War, and he left that with a new theory, or newly developed theory called logotherapy. And this idea is that the most primary kind of drive of humans is purpose. And what he said was, or he quoted Nietzsche, who said that someone who has a why to live for can suffer almost any how. And hopefully we're not talking about a situation quite as bad as anyhow, but when we have challenges, when we have obstacles, when we have things that are difficult in our lives, the things that sometimes what keep us going and allow us to manage it and put it into perspective are the bigger pictures of family, of lifetime goals and pursuits and passions and all these kinds of things. So easy to lose that, but we really have to cling on to it, because at the end of the day, these are actually the most important things of all.
And maybe just concluding this one, I had a lovely experience with a lady who was a forensic accountant. So she looked through business reports and balance sheets and tried to find companies that were trying to rip her company off. So they were trying to commit fraud on them. And she had a laser sharp mind. She was, I don't know, very, very intelligent. And she hated her job because it was all Excel sheets. It was all Excel sheets and dealing with the board of directors calling her in and saying, justify your opinion for this, that, and the other. And so she said she had a very stressful job. Her hobby was oil painting, and she was brilliant at it. And she didn't realize how important it was for her until, there were a whole bunch of participants and she was handing her phone around and everybody was looking at these, swiping across these pictures and going, wow, did you do these? I think it was the first time that she had the recognition that these pictures were actually really good. And I spoke to her a year after this event and she says, today life has changed completely. I go to work, I do my stuff, but in my mind, I've got a plan of the picture that I'm going to get back to that evening. So how has it changed? And she says, like night and day. I used to get stressed about what I do, and now I simply know that what I do is way better than anybody else can do. And I've actually got something, pretty decent to go home to at the end of the day. So I'm very, very cool, calm, and collected when I'm dealing with all of the day-to-day stuff that happens.
I think this is a really nice example. One of the reasons I think why that's so useful is that I believe oil paint takes a long time to dry. And so you're forced in this process that she's going to take days or even weeks in order to produce this final product. Very different to sitting down for 10 minutes and walking away. So she has to have this kind of very slow, methodical, intentional approach to kind of creating what she wants to create. And I think that's all part of what is really kind of keeping her driven and what is keeping this kind of creativity up front and center for her. So if you can find what that is, a lot of people enjoy jigsaw puzzles, right? Jigsaw puzzles for me is not something I've ever particularly enjoyed, but some people take weeks building a massive jigsaw puzzle that they have in their living room, and I think it's actually a really sweet thing, and it's that same thing of small creative processes over a long period. Now, Tim, let me jump into the discussion questions and sort of trying to provoke the participants' thoughts on this. So the first question is quite a broad one. How well do you manage your stress? So just quite simply, do you perceive that you're good at managing it? Do you perceive that you could be better? Give yourself a kind of rating and maybe think about areas where it could be improved. So how well do you do it? And then the second question is, what techniques do you know or use? And this, of course, can include anything we discussed today, but anything else that you are using, anything along the lines of physical exercise or journaling or something creative or a purpose or a sport or whatever it may be. What is your kind of stress reliever or stress reducer? And then the third question, which I think is a really interesting one, is what do you perceive is the difference between stress management and resilience?
Okay. Well, that's good. Looking forward to the next one.